I'm going to talk about a couple of principles today. I was trying to figure out if I was going to do one of them um, but really all three kind of had to do with an event or a series of events that have been going on this week. Actually, probably a little bit longer than that, but really shown themselves this week. And I kind of figured that it was something like this was going to happen eventually. I was waiting for it, but then I've been confirmed. But I want to talk about three concepts, and then I'll introduce the events. Um, One is a tendency that we have to uh, to take the opposite. What I mean by that is we stake out a position, and when we stake out a position, we identify a group that holds the opposite position, and we tend to take the opposite of whatever that group then says. So if I perceive, it can be a religious group, it can be a political group, whatever the thing is, and so I've had debates with people religiously, and I could kind of feel that they held an opposite, not necessarily even to me, but uh, like whatever this group said, they would formulate their opinions based on what that group said. So if that person believes something, well, I naturally have to take the opposite side. It can be a religious denomination or whatever it is. The interesting thing that happens, though, is if a group starts to shift their ideas, then the person who is opposite will shift their oppositeness to where they now will hold positions they didn't. Now, the first group might have been shifting because they're developing new views and you know, kind of evolving in their own ideas. But the second group is not necessarily doing that. They're just maintaining the opposite. And this person says this, so now I have to be opposite of it. All right, almost a source of pride. That's one idea that I want to share. The second idea is kind of similar in that the truth will always come out eventually. We get so nervous that the truth is not. Oh no, the truth. These people don't know the truth, but the truth is very persistent, and it will come out. It will show itself eventually. Untruth reveals itself, and very similar to that it hits a reset button. Untruth will eventually, it will contradict itself, and it will eventually go down a path where people who hold that untruth will eventually start to eat themselves alive. They'll start contradicting themselves, and it will become obvious. And I want to talk about just a series of events and illustrate this, even in my own self, a tendency. I graduated in 1990, and school back then, it was a lot different than it is today. I'll grant you that. It was, for example, I remember when parent-teacher night. Kids loved parent-teacher night. We got dragged up the block to my elementary was at the end of our block, and there's all these cars parked in the parking lot, and kids not allowed. So the kids are there, and so we'd play hide and go seek in the cars. It was like a vacation. It was almost like Halloween without the candy and costumes. It was just like this fun night, right? And the parents went to learn about their kids, and we were all excited because we had done paintings or whatever we'd done, and that was going to get shown off to our parents, and the parents and the teachers were glad that parents were a part of their kids' education. It was involvement, and not so much anymore. And I'll illustrate that. Now, in the 90s, after I graduated, it started in some of the bigger cities like New York City and San Francisco and places like that. But there was this movement that started to come about, and it was a lot of the things that we're seeing with the gender identity and various alternative things, and a lot of the education of of American history and all sorts of things that are going on today, which are just completely over the top. It was just starting then, and it's got so far that we decided. I mean, for one, my family moved to Ukraine, and so we weren't going to educate our kids in a school where they didn't speak the language or didn't speak it well. And so we homeschooled. When we came back to the States, the education system had become such that we said, no, we're going to do homeschool even now. Now, we got to a point where we couldn't do that with one of our children because they were in accelerated classes and I couldn't teach them anymore. And he wanted to do trade classes. So we put him in a public school. The other three we put into private schools. But he was in high school. And now, this year, here's something that happened. School got shut down, and I don't think he got a great education in the last part of last year. Now they're talking about a hybrid. Our district just voted to do a hybrid type of a classroom, and people are up in arms. I was up in arms. I'm so angry that they're going to be doing school at home. Why? Because I feel this need to be opposite, right? I've got to be opposite. They're doing this, and that's wrong because I feel opposite to this group. And so now this group has transitioned to where they're doing some school at home, and now I feel opposite, even though we did this for, however 9, 10, 11 years that we did some homeschooling. So there's this tendency to be opposite. However, I want to pull in these other ideas. The idea of truth eventually showing itself, people revealing who they are, and eventually to the point of hitting this reset button. And people have shown who they are. I mentioned, the good old days when parents wanted, or teachers wanted parents' involvement, and that's maybe true in some instances, but it is not universal. One of the things that has happened this week, people have started realizing the implications of the homeschool version of public school, the virtual classrooms. A lot of teachers are realizing that, parents are going to start to learn what we're teaching their kids because this classroom is ongoing and the parents are at home. They got their work from home now, and they're going to walk by. They are showing who they are. And there was a teacher, I believe her name was Sarah Gross, was just someone grabbed a screenshot of one of her tweets. She deleted it, but it was too late. She called parents outsiders. Outsiders are going to see what's going on. Well, who's going to see what's going on in the classroom? It's parents. So parents, she labeled as outsiders. No desire to have them involved. And she specifically, this teacher specifically, identified what her concerns were. It had to do with the gender and sexual terminology and things that are going on in her class that she's very concerned. Another teacher, I can't remember his name, he specifically stated that he's really concerned. It's mostly about the conservative parents. Read that as religious parents. That's who he's most concerned about. He identified that. It's to such an extent that Fairfax, Virginia, has decided in the closure of their schools, and I'm not even sure if they're doing online school at all, or if they're just closing it down until they feel comfortable. But in the closure of the schools, to whatever extent it is, they advised parents not to educate their own children. See, they want absolutely no parental involvement. They view parents as a danger to their kids, as a completely different from the 70s and 80s when I grew up. I told you it was different. And they reveal themselves. But this is unpleasant. James wrote that, things get purified through fire. That means it's inconvenient when things get purified. When that process that God does that through it, it's not at all a pleasant process, right? We have to have patience through it. because God is working something, and we're against it. And we want to be opposite of it, and stand up and this is awful. But we need to understand that God is working something. God is going to work truth. And it will always work, and it will show people to be contradictory to themselves, and they will end up defeating their own purpose. And so it is that while this is unpleasant, and the at-home stuff is unpleasant, I predicted, personally, and I wasn't alone, it's not like I'm a genius or anything, but I predicted that this was going to backfire on the atheist agendas, because now parents are going to walk by their computers of their kids and hear Mrs. Gross telling her third grade student that he can be a she, and they're going to be upset about that. And we're going to get a reset. I really do believe that. I pray that we do. I pray that you don't feel the need to always be opposite just for the sake of being opposite. We obviously want to be opposite of the lie, but don't be opposite of something that God is working. Know the difference. God is working this, and we want to be on the right side of what God is doing. And so have some patience, as James says. I beg of you some patience for months or years, whatever this is going to take, as God reveals the lies of our society, and hits the reset button. It might not be convenient for you, but enjoy the fact that God is going to work something, and He's going to show the truth.